Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchart, or Ajahn Suchart Abhijato, who's given me his permission to read his books to you for free. Ajahn Suchart's books and talks are always free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We are resuming today Beyond Birth Ajahn Suchart Abhijato, an autobiography, published in December 2021. We are in Chapter 5 and resuming on page 217 with a subsection titled Not Socializing. I did not usually seek out conversations with others while at Bantad. I tried to perform my duties, helping with the meal preparations, serving food, and cleaning the sala. As for the work of meditation, it has to be done individually. When the group duties were completed, I would return to my kuti and do sitting and walking meditation. I did not talk to the other monks much. If I did, it would be during the pana break, not at the kuti. The conversations were mostly about where I came from and such, not discussing the Dhamma. I never had to take turns boiling the water or manning the sala. In the beginning of my stay, we did not have any stove, so a boy from the village had to bring a pot of boiled water to make cocoa for us. When it was the break time, we would each pour a cup of cocoa, drink it, and then go back to our kuti. Later, when there were more monks, we had to take turns boiling the water to make cocoa by ourselves. At that time, there were also a few bottled drinks that had been donated by the lay people. When more lay people came to donate things, we had to take turns receiving them, though I never had to do it. Taking weekly rotations, monks had to stay by the sala during the day to watch for visitors. They would ask them who they intended to visit, and then report to the Langta, who might receive them. I never had to do this job, though. Whenever there was a minor assembly to resolve issues among the junior monks, they did not ask me or the foreign monks to join them. Venerable Ajahn Bunmi and Venerable Ajahn Lee did not attend them either. Perhaps because at the time I did not speak Thai that fluently and had a little English speaker's accent, I was treated as one of the foreigners, so I did not know much about what was going on at the monastery. While I was at Bantad, Venerable Ajahn Bunmi was still there, and Venerable Ajahn Lee would be there intermittently, sometimes spending the rains at another monastery. Venerable Ajahn Bunmi was there until Luangta asked him to go to another monastery. I didn't have many conversations with Venerable Ajahn Lee because he did not talk much. I did not really know what to talk to him about anyway. A conversation requires wanting to know something from him, but I had nothing I wanted to ask him. At that time, I did not know that he was an arhat, because he conducted himself like any other monk. He behaved like a junior monk, carrying his own bowl on alms round. He would even wash his own bowl and do everything for himself. He always said that when you stay with a teacher, there can be only one teacher. As for Venerable Ajahn Singtang Dhammawaro, I saw him once in a while because he visited Luangta a few times a year. If he came while the monks had no communal activities, we would just stay in our own kutis and I wouldn't see him. Next, there is a quote on page 219. When we are with others, it is helpful if our minds are at the same level, because then there are no conflicts. It becomes more difficult if the minds are at different levels. The next section begins on 220, and it is titled, Reading a Dhamma book is like listening to a Dhamma talk. While I was studying with Luangta, at that time there were no CDs. When he gave a Dhamma talk, it would be recorded on tape, but there were no players for us to listen to it. He had several books out, all of which I read, though there were only 3 that I read repeatedly. Venerable Acharya Moon Buridatta Thera, A Spiritual Biography, Patipada, Venerable Acharya Moon's Path of Practice, and Wan Dwangjai, Mirror of the Heart. I would read these books an hour each day. Reading his Dhamma book was like hearing a Dhamma talk from him, because they were transcribed verbatim from the recordings. While reading, my mind became concentrated, undistracted, and peaceful. It was as if I were listening to him teaching. I understood the whole picture as well as the details of the practice. I saw the path clearly and had no questions about sila, samadhi, panya, or the liberation from suffering. His Dhamma talks showed every step in such detail that when I practiced meditation, I would see everything that he mentioned, especially where the obstacles were, and where the delusions might trap us. He gave warnings for everything, so there was no need to bother him. This is the benefit we will get from studying the Dhamma and listening to Dhamma talks. We will know in advance that the path ahead of us has obstacles. We need knowledgeable people to point these things out ahead of time. We who lack this knowledge should therefore study regularly and continuously. Venerable Acharya Moon Buridatta Thera, A Spiritual Biography, and Patipada, Venerable Acharya Moon's Path of Practice, are two books suitable for those who are serious about meditation. The biography of Venerable Ajahn Moon explains belief in Buddhism, helping readers have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. In the Path of Practice, he emphasized meditation to get rid of the kilesas and mental suffering, using the various methods employed by the enlightened monks. Some enlightened monks would do hours of walking meditation, or stay in a cemetery, and others had to sit on the edge of a cliff or in the forest where tigers walked by. They each had their own means for controlling the mind. Luangta recorded all these methods so that those who desire release from suffering can choose a proven method conducive to them. There is a quote on page 222. Reading books written by meditators is like listening to Dhamma talks. It can calm the mind. Contemplating them can bring understanding. When wisdom arises, we do not have to remember it, because that understanding will always remain in our heart. The next section is on page 223 and is titled, Dealing Mainly with My Own Kilesas and Passions. I had no interest in dealing with anything or anyone else at that time. I just wanted to deal with my own kilesas and passions, to fight with my own concerns. At that time, my mother had some property in my name and kept sending documents for me to sign whenever a piece of land needed to be measured or some such. Just receiving the letters, signing the documents, and sending them back was too much trouble for me, so I just gave all the properties to her because I did not want to deal with even small matters. They distracted me for hours at a time. I tried to fight the kilesas, shutting them out and killing desires so that they would occur less and less. Living and learning from Luangta was very good because of his extensive knowledge. He could recommend a way to clear any obstruction. He explained how the kilesas arise, where we get stuck with samadhi, or where we have problems with panya. Thus, whenever I encountered problems, I recognized and corrected them fairly easily, because I had been shown how ahead of time. Luangta knew how to zero in on the kilesas whenever he saw them arise in us. Sometimes we do what we think is good for us and our kilesas because it makes us happy. At that time, we won't know that it's our kilesas at work. So when we do something which we think is good for us, it is probably only good for the kilesas. But it is dangerous for the mind. When we have done it, we will feel happy and think it was a good thing. But the truth is, it's enslaving us to these things. When we are unable to do them, suffering will arise. This is the problem with the kilesas. Since Luangta had experienced them all, he would not criticize us or forbid us from anything if we were on the right track. On the contrary, if our kilesas manifested, he would just suggest more walking and sitting meditation. There is a quote next on page 225. We have Dhamma when our mind is calm and not disturbed. If we get angry easily, it means that the kilesas are still there. Dwelling on anger means that the kilesas are buried underneath, and when a button is pushed, they blow up like a volcano. Just because we are calm now does not mean that we do not have kilesas. The test is, what happens when someone pushes our buttons? As soon as something pokes a sore spot, look at it. Instantly, our austerity will break. This is why our teachers like to test their students by pressing on their kilesas. Whoever thinks that they are up to it can then go to stay with a Kruba Ajahn, who will, in no time, provoke your kilesas. But people like to stay with a Kruba Ajahn for this very reason. They will then understand and will no longer be confused, because every time they are confused, the Kruba Ajahn will know it, and in a moment tease out the kilesa. The next section begins on page 226 and is titled, Visiting Home for the First Time. After 5 years, I asked to visit home for the first time because my mother wanted to see me. She had only come to visit me once during the 2nd or 3rd year, staying at a hotel in Udon and taking a taxi to the monastery. It was inconvenient for both of us. We only spent an hour together because Luangta was not pleased when monks had visitors, so I told her not to visit again. My sister had graduated from Chulalongkorn University and gone to England to improve her English, but had just returned home. So I asked Luangta for permission to go home for a visit, since I had been at Bantad for 5 years. I stayed at Wat Potisampan while in Pattaya. The location was more convenient to my house than Wat Chanlam because it was in town with free transportation. The timing of my stay coincided with Songkran, and I remember being caught and made to sit in a row with other monks. Over there it was popular to pour water on the monks. After staying at Wat Potisampan for a visit with my family, I went to Suphanburi and stayed at my grandmother's house for 2 nights in a separate spare room that was vacant. Before I left, I heard Chulaborn Dham had a meditation center for the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, EGAT staff. It had kutis near the forest, which remained quite cool, even at the height of the hot season in April. So I stopped by there to meditate. The meditation center at Chulaborn Dham had a wooden sala similar to the one on the mountain here, Cheon Mountain. There were small kutis, and for morning alms there were 2 officials' residences we could go to, one quite close and the other a little farther on the edge of the village. There was no abbot at the meditation center, and we, the other 2 or 3 monks there at that time, and I, were on our own. After staying at the meditation center for 2 days, I heard that there was a plane crash on April 27, 1980, carrying several meditation masters from Udon. Even though I would have liked to stay at Chulaborn Dham longer, I thought that perhaps I could help at Bantad, so I went back. However, Luangta took care of everything on his own and did not permit the monks to do anything but to continue to meditate normally. The next section begins on page 230 and is titled, Mindfulness Must Be with the Task at Hand. The many years that I stayed at Bantad, I was not Luangta's close disciple. Even though we lived at the same monastery, we were like strangers. I was actually quite afraid and kept my distance, so I never sought him out unless it was absolutely necessary. I did not want to face the tiger. Once I had to help Luangta with an eyelash that got stuck in his eye. Normally, a senior monk would remove it for him because the other monks' minds were not calm enough to perform this task. However, on that day, the senior monk was out wandering to Tonga, and the other monks did not dare to attempt it, so they asked me to help. Bracing myself to take the bull by the horns, I went to perform the task. It was a difficult job because sati had to be maintained so that the hand would not tremble while using the tweezers to get the eyelash and remove it. I was nervous at first, and the fear of his reaction was most intense, so I had to calm my mind first. Once I was sure that I had sati, there was no problem doing the job. There is a quote on page 231. Every time I saw Lawangta, I had to be prepared to be tested on just about anything. A meditator always looks at the mind. So whichever test he had for you, you had to watch to see if your mind stayed calm. And that is followed by another quote on page 232. The Lord Buddha guaranteed that it is possible to be enlightened in 7 days, 7 months, or 7 years, depending on each person's ability. And we're going to stop there today. We will start the next recording on page 233, which happens to be the very beginning of chapter 6, titled Beyond Birth. Once it exploded, it all disappeared. Nothing was left. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you next time with Metta. Bye-bye.